Okay, welcome. Today we are going to, I've had some people ask about the trees that we did. If you don't have a canvas or if you don't have acrylic paints, if you could do it in watercolor. So when you're using acrylic paints, you can make acrylics look like watercolors. And you can do it on watercolor paper. You would just use more water. That would be more transparency. It would be a more transparent look, and use more water, and you would want to use watercolor paper. But if you don't have acrylics and you have watercolors and a watercolor paper, I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a little different than the trees that we did, but it's basically the same concept. So I added some brown to my watercolor, and other than that, it's all the colors that we have used before. So in doing watercolor, we're going to just do maybe a tree. And we're just gonna kind of do like just kind of a basic shape and not too specific. In fact, I don't like how that's looking out here. So we kind of just want a round look for the tree. And I'm just drawing some kind of lines here. In the back, we'll want to have a little bit of, actually I'm going to make that a little lower. And then we're going to have just kind of some little different colors here in the background. So we're going to go with, watercolor is always light to dark. And we want to start off with the farthest back, which would be the sky. And we're just going to go ahead and I'm just getting some paint on my brush. Make sure it has some water on it as well. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to do just a light coat of sky first. And just kind of go through that. And you can even do it, if it's a light enough color, you can go over where your tree is. But once you start adding more color to it, then you're going to want to make sure that you leave spots for your tree branches. So again, I'm adding some sky here, but I'm kind of leaving where I drew those branches because I'm getting kind of a darker color here now. And with watercolors, it's so fun to do clouds and stuff, because clouds are kind of splotchy. They're kind of all over. So you can let your watercolors run and blend together. And then what I like to do is you take a clean paper towel and you can just add in clouds here and there to make it look like there's just kind of some wisp of clouds. Now I got this really dark right there because I had some dried up paint on my brush. So I'm going to go through right here and just add more blue to try to get rid of that line right there. And you can also start adding in little different color, maybe some green into the sky to kind of blend it. And then I'm gonna go through and dab out where I want my branches again. If you accidentally went over those, and then you're gonna want to come in with some clouds again. And you just keep going with that process until you find kind of the sky that you're looking for. And always wet your brush because you don't want hard edges. Especially in the sky, you're not going to have some hard edges in the sky. You're going to have just soft edges. And I'm going to take a little of that turquoise that I added up there and kind of bring it down here. And blend it through as well. And this is just your preference on how blue of a sky you want, how many clouds you want, or if you don't want any clouds, just kind of let the colors blend together. All right, we're gonna go ahead and let that dry a bit, and we're gonna start by going through, there's just a part that's bugging me, so I keep adding some color right there. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start with the tree. So with the sky, I just went ahead and I don't like those sharp edges on the sides, so I'm dabbing those out. With the sky, I like to use a bigger brush that's a square brush just because it covers more area, but you can use what you can use. If you only have one brush, you can use that one brush. Okay, so we're gonna go and start with some of a trunk, part of the trunk of the tree. So I'm going to take just some brown. It's been watered down, and I'm just gonna go through and draw, try to be as squiggly as I can, but then again, before this, that line hardens or dries, you wanna come through with water. Again, do that on this side, and you're gonna wanna soften those edges. So that you never have like a really harsh line. Okay, so we've kind of made the outsides a little bit darker, and we'll just kind of keep going up the tree with some different branches. And I'm not going to fill in too many of the branches yet. I'm going to wait until I've added some of the blossoms in order to add in some of those more branches. Okay, I just added some more of the tree trunk, and I kind of want to let that dry. Now, there has been a lot of blossoms blooming on my trees outside, and so I thought, let's do a fun blossom tree. So I'm going to take the red that I have, and I'm going to add just a touch of purple to it because I think that it was just a little too orange, and then I'm going to add a lot of white to it. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of add some blossoms. And these are going to go darker or dry lighter than they're coming on. Might add a little bit of a yellow to it too. Just, I'm not really seeing the right color yet, but that's okay. So we're gonna just kind of do very light, light paint. So a lot of water and a little bit of paint. And we're just gonna add dots that kind of blend together of these blossoms. And again, I'm out of paint, so I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna take a little bit of this purple, add it to the yellow, add it to the red. Can add a little bit more red and just a touch of yellow. And again, make sure that it's plenty wet. And we're just gonna come through and add these blossoms on our tree. And because the brown is a darker color, these blossoms aren't going to cover over where the branches are. And so that's why I didn't add as much brown up here, because I'm not quite sure where I'm gonna have the trees actually show through. So again, I'm just adding little blossoms on the branches. And if you see a part that you're like, don't really like, you can just always add some more water and lighten it up as much as you can. I'm still using some red, and this time I'm going to put a little, I'm not going to put as much purple in. I'm just going to do some red with a lot of water and come back through with just some more blossoms. And this time I'm wanting to do a little bit darker coming through, because as the sun's hitting, some of these blossoms are going to be lighter and some of them are going to be darker because of the shadows. So I'm going to leave some of these blossoms as lighter and some as darker. And you can make this tree as full of blossoms as you want, and as wide as you want. And these I'm going to kind of just rinse through a little bit, and I'm going to take my paper towel and dab out some of these areas now to make them look lighter and softer, because as the tree gets higher, it's going to hit the sun more, and so you want those parts to be definitely lighter, and the leaves that are more down below, you're going to want a lot darker and deeper in color. And this is This is just basically the process that you keep doing over and over, layer by layer, just adding more shades of the different colors here and there, and you're letting, my paper is still wet, and you're letting that paper blend the colors together. And just keep going. Now, if you were gonna do the grove of trees that we did earlier with the acrylic, you would just do the same process, but you would just add more of trunks of trees, and then instead of the pink, you would want to add the green, but you would do it the same way. You would work light to dark. Whereas when we were doing the acrylics, we could do the light at the very end. So with watercolors, you have to do the opposite, but it's basically the same concept. It's layer on layer, and you just keep going until you get that color that you want. I'm just going to fill some more of these in, very light. Some light ones down here. I want some very light ones coming up here to the tops. And watercolors will dry lighter than you have them, so you may have to go back through and darken them as you go. And it's all really about preference of whether you want your tree, how many leaves you want on your tree, how many branches you want. There's no right or wrong. And I try to make my tree as asymmetric as I can so that it looks like it's not fake. Unless you're a really good pruner, you probably have your trees not perfectly shaped. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna let that dry for a little bit now. And I wanted to just come down through and do just some grass. And so then I'm gonna go back with my flatter brush. And I've said before, I always have a hard time with green. I never feel like green is really the right green. For some reason, I always think that green looks pretty fake. So I always am blending greens together, which makes it hard because then it doesn't match. But we're gonna go ahead. I just got some green, a lot of water, the green, and then added some yellow until I got the color that I want. And be careful as you're going along the trunk, because you don't want that to go into the trunk. You don't want a green trunk. And they will start blending, especially if it hasn't dried completely. And you're just going to want to keep everything wet, because again, light to dark. We don't want this dramatic dark color on here. We're just gonna draw this edge in as carefully as we can. And you see how you can see that yellow really didn't blend right there. And I'm completely okay with that, because that's gonna start looking like maybe it's getting a little bit more sun there. And I'm just going through right there, making it look like we've gone behind the tree. I've actually gotten into the tree. If you've gone into the tree, just dab it out, and you'll have to watch it because it will keep bleeding into it, and it will definitely stay there once it dries. So you're gonna have to keep checking on it. And again, I'm just gonna add some more green, this time more dark. I'm going across, and I don't have to use as much water here because the paper is already still wet. It hasn't dried from the last time. And I'm just gonna do, again, some darks, some lights. I don't want it to look flat, so I'm just gonna add in some different highlights, and then a little bit of green over here. And you don't want to be able to see brush lines. You want it to blend. So you're going to go through and bring that color out. And I'm going to add this yellow back in because I really liked that yellow kind of hitting the grass there. Now, you'll notice, like, I'm using a cheaper watercolor than what I would normally use if I was actually doing a regular picture. I would be using different watercolors, and you really can't tell too much of a difference, but then you can, because they blend a little bit better. You have more color options. So if you're having, problems with the blending, or you're having, or if you want to, go, wow, I really like watercolors and I want to do this again, you might want to invest in some better paints. I'm just kind of adding some darker again here. So it's just layering. It's just all layering back and forth. And even though watercolor is harder, it's less forgiving, you can still kind of keep going back and forth, getting where you want to be. If you made a mistake, you can usually, even with watercolor, you can blot it out. Or if not, you just add another tree to it. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry now a little bit, and we're gonna come back and we're gonna look at this sky up here again. And I want to add a little bit more color to the sky. So I'm gonna take some of that blue again. And again, just kind of come through on places and bring more of that color down. Using this big brush again. Might add a little bit of yellow to that blue. All right. Now when you're going back through, you want to make sure that you blend it in, because now you don't want to go over those blossoms, but you don't want to have like a sharp line. So you kind of just want to feather it out, make it all kind of go together. And then again, dab in clouds. And I see kind of a sharp line coming right here, so I'm adding more water. Maybe adding some clouds here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead, let that dry, move to another section, and I'm gonna start back on this tree trunk. Now we'll wanna come back in, and we're gonna want to have it be darker and more detail. So I'm just gonna come back through with the color with not so much of the water, and come back through and make some darker lines and then blend them out. You don't want your tree trunk to look smooth, because tree trunks are not smooth. And you'll want to, I'm choosing that the sun's hitting more this way, and so I'm making this lighter over here. And tree trunks, they have a lot of lines in them, but they're not just straight lines here and there. They're very sporadic lines. It's not directly up and down. So when you think, oh, it's starting to look too much just like a line grid, come through with your water. And that was way too dark over here, so I'm going to smooth it out. And then again, the underneath parts of the branches are going to be darker. Than the top part. So you just kind of have to go with where that is. And when they come together, the branches come together, you're going to have it be a little bit darker as well. And that's going to cause it to look more dimensional. And now you can kind of add in some of these branches, but you don't want to add too many, because mostly you're going to want to see the blossoms, and I don't like that. It didn't look very good to me, so I'm kind of fading that out so it doesn't look like a mistake, because that did look like a mistake to me. Okay, and then I'm just going to add another branch right here coming out, because I felt like there should be one coming through. And then I'm going to fade out right here, because I want those blossoms to poke through. And then just take some kind of lines here and there. Because here and there you're going to see parts of the branches. This is what's going to make your tree look more 3D. It's coming in with this drier detail at the end. And you'll notice that as your watercolors dry, you're going to have to keep adding more water because sometimes you are thinking, oh, it's still kind of wet, but it's been drying. So you'll always have to kind of go back and forth and add more water. Oops, I just spent that. You see how just adding these little lines here and there, it's bringing this tree, it's making it look so much more three-dimensional. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and down at the bottom, you're going to have your trunk kind of coming out with some roots. And it's going to be darker down at the bottom. And we're going to let that dry for a little bit again. That's the whole concept of watercolors, is going back and forth. I get kind of impatient, so I try to just move to another spot until I really don't like that branch, how thick it got. So we're just going to kind of dab it out. Just have it be a little bit. Okay. Still feel like there maybe needs to be a branch right there. Maybe a little more of a branch right out here. All right, so you can just keep on going. We're going to just go back to the grass now. I'm going to take a little bit of brown and mix it with that green. And it's going to give you kind of an olive color, a darker color. And then I'm going to go in with the water. And I kind of like how this kind of looks like it's part of the root coming out, sticking out. The grass is not smooth there. And then I want to go lighter again on this side because we're thinking the sun is hitting about there. A little bit. Here, coming down. I'm going to add some kind of wisp of grass right there because as you're getting closer, you can see more of the detail. And the color will be lighter. Okay, now we're going to kind of fade this color back. I'm going to try to get some green up right there. We don't want lines, so we feather everything back, blend it all back. Now, if you don't want to have it a complete, I've seen some great pictures of trees that they have just done the tree itself and nothing in the background. If you want to do that, that will be easier because you don't have to work on a background, and it kind of gives it a modern look, and I really like that, but I wanted to show how you could do the background. So if you were doing the grove of trees, that you could do that as well. I'm going to add some color here up against this tree. do a little bit more green, yellow here. Kind of bring in some different colors of that green. And make sure to come back with water to blend it. Let the water do some of the blending here. Yellow and green again, a little bit darker. I'm coming up here and then taking the water, blending. And then we'll do the same on the other side again. We'll come up here. And we're thinking that if the sun's coming this way, this is going to be more of the shadow as well. So it's going to be darker green on that side. Add in some greens here. And I don't know why I've never liked the greens when they just come. You'll have to let me know if you have the same problem or if it's just something that I have issues with, but I always feel like the greens are not the right greens. I don't think they look real, so I'm always mixing greens up, and then I can't remember how I made those greens in the first place. I should write it down or something, but just coming through here now, because this is going to be darker as we're closer up. We're going to see more detail. And then again, blend this out as much as we can. Want those soft edges. We're going to come back over here. And I'm just going to add some yellow there. Come through, make sure you line up on these. And I'm gonna just bring in this green right up next to the tree so that it blends. But again, if you haven't done a background, you don't have to do a background. You could stop. You don't have to deal with that as much. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry because it's kind of getting a little wet. We're gonna go back up to our blossoms again and just kind of go through a final, more detailed, blossoms. We want to add a little bit more detail. So I'm going to take some of that purple and I'm just going to go through and add kind of some of these and just small dots. Now, I don't want them to blend too much. I just want it to give the sense that there's some leaves there. If you were closer, that you would see them. And again, add a little bit of purple to that. That will provide the black. Without using black, that will provide some of the shade that the tree is, some of the branches are getting shade from. And again, just keep going through this whole process of lights, darks, add where you want. Right here is looking too many, so I'm just spreading that out a little bit with water. And then I'm just going to take some of the, as we're getting higher up, I'm just going to do more of just a red instead of the purple because the shade's not hitting as much. And some of the places that you have added branches now, try to come through and make them look like there's a reason that those branches are there. So you kind of fill in the spots around those branches. Up here I want to add, and these should be a little more lighter. And again, the inside of the tree is going to be more dark than the outside branches. So you're going to kind of fade that out. Use some water to kind of blend it, let it this is too red, so I'm just going to go through and spread that out kind of. Take some of these blossoms. These are going to be more dark down here because of the shadow. Might need to add a little bit of purple to make it shadowy under here. And just go ahead and blend those out. And it's all about being gradual and layer by layer. And there you have a tree. I'm just going to add a little bit of detail over here, some of the closer up grass as well. Just adding in a little bit of color. And just keep working on it till you like it. Hope you enjoy it. Send me your pictures.